Have you ever believed that the two people you trust the most, your best friend and the person you love, could be the very ones destroying your life? For Sarah, everything seemed perfect. A cozy little home, bright smiles on social media, a devoted husband, and a best friend who felt more like a sister. But behind that glowing wedding photo hid a growing darkness, a secret that would turn love into a nightmare and trust into a deadly weapon. It started with one strange text, a blurry photo online, and then one fateful night when everything came crashing down. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about how an ordinary woman can lose all sense of reason when her heart is pushed past its breaking point. Hold on to your emotions, because what you're about to hear might make you ask yourself, if it were me, would I have done anything differently? Stay till the end to find out. What would you do if the person you trusted most turned out to be the one stabbing you in the back? It all began on what seemed like a peaceful afternoon. A small sunlit garden, laughter from a group of close friends, and at the center of it all, Sarah and her husband Daniel, the couple the neighbors lovingly called the newlyweds. 6 years together, 2 years married, a quiet home, and a social media feed full of perfect photos. Holding hands, bright smiles, captions that read forever. But if you looked closely, something didn't feel right. She smiled, but her eyes didn't. He held her hand, but his phone was always face down on the table, screen black, like it was hiding something. Every time Daniel showered, he took longer. He said work was stressful, that clients needed him late, yet his clothes carried a faint trace of perfume that wasn't hers. Sarah still believed, still told herself every marriage has its distance, and Lily, her best friend since high school, the one who'd stood by her through everything, had started to change. She was busier, always caught up, skipping coffee dates, replying to Sarah's messages with cold one-line answers. Sarah didn't know that this distance wasn't random. Within the calm of dinner nights and weekend gatherings, small cracks were forming between the three of them. Quiet, invisible, but dangerous. Then one day, Daniel told her he was going to a bachelor party for a co-worker. Not a close friend, not anyone she knew. Just a guy's night, he said. No need for her to come. She smiled weakly and nodded, trying to ignore the unease building inside her. It's just a party, she told herself. But when Daniel closed the door, the sound of her own heartbeat echoed like a warning. That night, Sarah sat on the couch, phone in hand, the glow of the screen lighting up her anxious face. A notification popped up, a photo posted by one of Daniel's friends. Amid the dim lights and raised beer glasses, she spotted a familiar silhouette. Her chest tightened, her hands began to tremble. She zoomed in, her eyes fixed on the corner of the image. There, just behind Daniel, was a woman she knew all too well. The face, the smile, it was Lily. The world around Sarah froze. The glass slipped from her hand, red wine spilling across the tile floor like blood. She didn't know it yet. But this was only the beginning of the nightmare. Tonight there was a bachelor party, but only one of them would make it out the same. What do you think Sarah should do next? Stay silent or go find the truth with her own hands? Comment below and tell us what you would do. Sarah wasn't the kind of woman who fell apart easily. She was the one everyone in the neighborhood adored, the woman who remembered everyone's birthday, who brought cupcakes to the office just to see her co-workers smile. One friend once said, Sarah can turn a terrible day into something warm with just one message. At home, she was a devoted mother and a supportive wife, always standing behind Daniel, the man she believed was her other half. They met young, built their life from nothing. A small cream-walled house, family photos lining the hallway, cozy movie nights under a thick blanket. They looked like the picture of a perfect American dream. But even the prettiest pictures crack when the light shifts. Daniel had been working later than ever, claiming the financial market was crazy, that he needed to push harder for their future. And Sarah believed him. She truly did. She took on more of the little burdens. Her nephew's school fees, the rising electric bills, the credit card Daniel promised to take care of next week. Everyone thought she had it all, but inside, she felt her life slowly slipping through her fingers. The only person she could talk to was Lily, her best friend, her sister in all but blood, the woman who held the bouquet at her wedding, who held her hand through every miscarriage, who knew better than anyone how terrified Sarah was of being alone. They once promised each other, no matter what happens, we'll never keep secrets. But like everything else in Sarah's life, that promise was starting to crack. On Instagram, Lily still posted smiling pictures from brunches and weekend getaways, her captions light and carefree. But when Sarah texted her, "Are you okay?" the replies came cold and distant. "Busy, talk later." Sarah couldn't understand it. Somewhere between the online smiles and real-world silence, the space between them had grown, quiet, invisible, but undeniable. She told herself, maybe people just change. Yet deep down, she knew it wasn't just Lily who was changing. Something inside her own home was shifting too. That night, when Daniel left again with his usual work meeting, Sarah felt a hollow ache in her chest. She picked up her phone, scrolling through old messages, until her eyes stopped on one name, Lily. Her hand trembled as she pressed call. The ringtone dragged on, long, slow, heavy. Then came that familiar voice, warm yet strangely distant. "I can't meet you tonight, something came up." Sarah hesitated, about to ask where she was. But the line went dead. Silence filled the room, broken only by her sigh and the flicker of her phone screen. And then came the question, "Ika not, why is Lily avoiding me?" But if she's not home, then where is she? That question would haunt Sarah for the rest of her life. If it were you, would you call again? Just to hear the truth your heart already knows? In the days that followed, everything began to feel offbeat. Daniel started coming home later and later, and every time he walked through the door, he said the same thing. "I had a meeting." But Sarah noticed the little things, the kind of details you only pick up when something inside you already knows. His shirt smelled faintly of a woman's perfume, not hers, not familiar, but soft and expensive, the kind that lingered. When she asked casually, he just smiled, kissed her forehead, and disappeared into the bathroom, where the sound of running water lasted 20 minutes, as if he were trying to wash something off his skin. His phone, once left carelessly on the table, was now always face down, the screen dark. One afternoon, when she picked it up to move it, a small line appeared on the screen. Password changed. Her heart stopped for a second. She wasn't the suspicious type, but when had they started needing new passwords between them? And Lily. Lily was different too, in a way that scared her. Her best friend, the one who used to call every night, now cancelled plans over and over. Once Sarah invited her for coffee. Lily agreed. Then 10 minutes before, she texted, "Sorry, something came up." Her tone was still sweet, her messages still filled with laughing emojis, but the warmth was gone. The distance between them was stretching thinner and thinner, like a string about to snap. Sarah tried to ignore it, but every time her phone lit up and went dark again. The unease in her chest grew heavier. One evening, while sorting through papers, she found a crumpled receipt in Daniel's jacket pocket. A bar she'd never heard of across town. A place Daniel had never mentioned, or so he'd claimed. The total wasn't much, just a few cocktails, but the timestamp stopped her cold. The same night Daniel said he'd been working late at the office. She let out a small, bitter laugh. "Probably just a coincidence," she whispered to herself, but her hands trembled as she set the paper down. That night Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, until she heard the soft ding of Daniel's phone. Once, twice, 3 times. He rolled over, picked it up, swiped the screen, and smiled faintly. In the dark. She turned away, pretending to sleep, eyes wide open, heart racing. The next morning she looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back had tired eyes and a practiced smile. Everyone said she was lucky, but Sarah knew real happiness doesn't need pretending. That afternoon, while scrolling through social media, a photo appeared on her feed. A group of people at a bar, neon lights casting colors across the frame, and right in the center a familiar figure. She zoomed in and her heart stopped. It was Daniel, and next to him, leaning into his shoulder, was a woman with long brown hair and a tilted smile, a smile that looked exactly like Lily's. Sarah's hands went cold. She shut her phone, but the image burned behind her eyelids. She called Lily, no answer. She called again. Silence, then she called Daniel, straight to voicemail. Only the sound of beep, beep filled the air, sharp, hollow, and endless. Sarah stood up, grabbed her keys, and stopped thinking. If the truth refused to come to light, she would drive into the darkness and drag it out herself, no matter what it cost. And you? If you were Sarah, would you still choose to believe? Or would you start to look for the truth? The bar reeked of beer, cigarette smoke, and perfume all tangled together. The bass thumped through the floor. Lights flashed wildly, and everything felt dizzy and chaotic. Sarah stood by the door, her hands ice cold but her chest burning. She didn't even know why she was here, only that if she hadn't come, she would have gone insane. She stepped inside, pushing through the crowd, forcing herself to breathe evenly. With every step, her heartbeat grew louder, her grip on her phone tighter. She passed laughing strangers, the clinking of glasses, the roar of drunken cheers, until she saw him. Daniel. He was sitting on a couch near the center of the room, leaning in close to a woman. The woman turned slightly, and Sarah's heart stopped. It was Lily, her best friend. They were sitting far too close enough that no one could mistake what it meant. Daniel said something and Lily laughed. Not loudly, but enough for Sarah to see that familiar smile, the one that used to belong to her. Then Daniel's hand reached out, brushing against Lily's wrist. A small touch, barely a second, but it hit Sarah like a knife straight through the chest. She froze. The music, the crowd, the noise, everything vanished. There was only the sound of her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Daniel turned his head. Their eyes met. That single moment stretched into forever. His smile vanished. His face went pale. Lily jolted, spilling her drink across the table. The room fell silent for a heartbeat. Even the music seemed to hold its breath. Sarah walked forward. The crowd parted slowly, whispers rippling around them. "What is this?" she asked. Her voice was calm, too calm, but her eyes were wet. Daniel stood up, stammering. "Sarah, please, just let me explain." "Explain what?" She cut him off, her voice trembling. "Explain how you've been sleeping with my best friend?" Lily lowered her head, tears slipping down her face. Daniel said nothing. He couldn't even meet her eyes. Sarah took a deep breath, fighting the sob that threatened to break free. Then she whispered almost to herself, "Don't bother." She turned around and walked out. The door closed behind her, and the music roared back to life. But for Sarah, the world had gone silent. She stood outside, the cold night air biting at her skin, tears streaming down her face before she even realized it. She didn't know where she was going, only that what she had just seen would haunt her for the rest of her life. Then the narrator's voice came soft and heavy, filled with quiet sorrow. She walked away. But this wasn't the end. It was only the first fall. "And you, if you were her, would you walk away in silence? Or stay, just to hear one last lie?" Sarah didn't remember how long she had been driving. The road ahead blurred through her tears, the world around her fading into a slow-motion film she was being forced to watch over and over again. She didn't want to believe it, but the image, Daniel's hand on Lily's wrist, his shocked eyes when he saw her, kept replaying in her mind like a wound that refused to close. She parked in the lot near their house and sat still, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. In the rearview mirror, she saw a pale, hollow face staring back, swollen eyes, smeared makeup, a woman she barely recognized. The house that had once felt safe now looked cold and empty. The couch where they used to watch movies, the kitchen where Daniel once hugged her from behind while she cooked. Every corner of that home had turned into evidence of a lie that had lasted far too long. She unlocked her phone and scrolled through old messages. "I love you. You're the only one for me." Words that once warmed her heart now made her stomach turn. At 2 a.m. Sarah was still awake, pacing like a ghost. She stopped in front of their wedding photo, the one where they were both laughing, eyes locked like nothing could ever break them apart. She took it off the wall, held it for a moment, then let it fall. The glass shattered, a sharp sound slicing through the silence. She sank to the floor, her hands trembling, but no more tears came. The next morning, the neighbors still greeted her with smiles. "You two make such a perfect couple," they said. Sarah smiled back politely, her heart an empty shell. Daniel didn't come home. No calls, no messages, only silence. And that silence told her more than any confession ever could. Then a text appeared from Lily. Just 3 words. "I'm sorry, Sarah." She stared at it for a long moment, then deleted it. No reply, no need. There was nothing left to say. Apologies meant nothing when they came from the people who destroyed you inside your own home. Days passed. Sarah went through the motions. Work, smiles, small talk. But inside she was crumbling. Every time she passed that bar, a dull pain stabbed her chest. Every time she saw a couple holding hands, She remembered that night. And then one afternoon, Daniel came back. He stood at the door, his voice low and broken. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't even know where to start." Sarah looked at him for a long moment, her voice quiet but steady. "You don't have to say anything, Daniel. I already know." She closed the door, gently but with finality. And in that single sound, she ended everything they had ever been. That night, Sarah sat alone in the dark. She thought about all the years they had shared, about the love that had once been real, until it turned into the knife that stabbed her in the back. And then came the voiceover, soft but heavy with truth. Sometimes the person who kills you doesn't need a gun or a knife. They just need to say they love you, and then betray it. So what about you? After a betrayal that deep, would you forgive? Or would you start thinking about how to take back your justice? Sarah was no longer the woman she had been 3 days ago. She woke in the middle of the night, heart racing, her dreams tangled between flashes of Daniel and Lily, old laughter twisted into whispers she couldn't escape. The house was silent, but inside her mind raged a storm. Memories flooded back. The nights Daniel said he had to work late. The days Lily suddenly became too busy. The moments Daniel's phone flipped face down the second she entered the room. Once those details had felt meaningless. Now they fit together perfectly, painting a picture so sharp it stole her breath away. She began doing what people who once loved too deeply often do, searching for reasons, trying to understand. She reread old texts, checked receipts, combed through every trace on their phones. One restaurant bill had both their names, dated the same night Daniel had said he was at the office. Her eyes froze on the line that read "Table for two." A chill ran through her body. Beside it lay a bracelet, the one Lily had given her for her birthday, the one Sarah wore every day. Now it felt like evidence from a crime scene of betrayal. Sarah didn't scream. She didn't break things. She went silent, the kind of silence more terrifying than any scream. She began to follow Daniel. Not like someone losing her mind, but with the precision of a woman who had once trusted completely and been betrayed to the bone. She knew his work hours, where he parked, when Lily went jogging. Every step they took, every glance they shared. She recorded it all, living proof of the truth they thought they could hide. One night, she parked a few meters from Daniel's new apartment. Through the window, the light glowed warm and soft. Two shadows moved inside, close, comfortable, as if nothing they were doing was wrong. Sarah sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, eyes empty. In that moment, her pain transformed into something colder, sharper. The part of her that had died in that bar was gone, replaced by something dangerous, determination. On the passenger seat lay her phone. She opened an old photo, the three of them together on a summer trip. She ran her finger across Lily's face, then Daniel's, and then she deleted the picture, without hesitation. At that moment, Sarah understood. If they could kill her trust, she could end everything her own way. The narrator's voice grew low and steady. Betrayal doesn't just break a heart. It awakens the darkest part of who we are. And when love dies, the only thing left is the price to be paid. The sky that day was heavy, weighed down just like Sarah's heart. For weeks she had tried to stay calm, convincing herself that time would dull the pain, that somehow she'd find peace again. But one afternoon, everything broke. Daniel texted her, his tone cold, detached, saying he needed to come by to pick up a few things. Sarah agreed, not knowing it would be their final confrontation. When the door opened, the familiar scent of his cologne filled the house, once intoxicating, now unbearable, soaked in lies. They stood there for a few seconds in silence, their eyes meeting, tension thick like a wire ready to snap. Then Daniel spoke. "I don't want to fight anymore." "What happened with Lily?" "It was just a mistake. Just a mistake." The words were soft, almost casual, yet they poured gasoline over the fire still smoldering inside her. The argument erupted, sharp, fast and violent, like knives thrown in the dark. Objects fell. Glass shattered. Voices rose and collided. A neighbor later recalled hearing, "Stop, please," followed by a loud crash, a chair hitting the floor. Then silence. The call to 911 came minutes later. When the police arrived, flashing red and blue lights painted the white walls of the house, flickering like distorted memories. Sarah sat on the floor, arms wrapped around her head, eyes blank and unfocused. Whatever had once been love was gone. All that remained was the wreckage of betrayal. The metal cuffs clicked around her wrists, cold and final. Neighbors watched from behind curtains, no one daring to speak. That night, no one in the neighborhood slept. Weeks later, the trial began. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the halls. The prosecutor's voice was steady, precise. The defendant's actions, the surveillance, the tracking, the collection of evidence, all demonstrate intent. This was not a spontaneous act, the defense countered firmly. This wasn't premeditation. It was the reaction of a woman shattered by betrayal, an emotional explosion, not a calculated crime. Back and forth, they argued. Evidence was shown. Blurred photos of the scene, reconstructed timelines, cold facts under harsh light. Then the key evidence appeared. Footage from a neighbor's security camera showing Daniel entering the house, Sarah's phone logs, and one unsent message on her screen that read, "I just want to talk." Those 4 words silenced the room. Then came the narrator's voice, slow, quiet, heavy with meaning. Sometimes all it takes is one sentence left unsaid, and the line between heartbreak and guilt disappears. The verdict was read. No one moved. It wasn't clear-cut, not innocent but not cold-blooded murder either. A grey area, somewhere between love, betrayal, and the unbearable cost of both. As Sarah left the courthouse, sunlight hit her tear-streaked face. People watching didn't know whether to pity her or fear her. And the voice closed the story. This was no longer about love or hate. It was about the final limit of what a person becomes when their heart has been completely destroyed. So tell me, when you're pushed to your breaking point, do you think you could still hold on to your sanity? When everything finally ended, Sarah was left with nothing but silence, the kind that ached deep inside. No more flashing red and blue lights against the walls, no more footsteps echoing on cold floors, no more judgmental stares in the courtroom. Only the ticking of a clock in a small room, steady and hollow, like the breathing of someone trying to learn how to live again. After the trial, she was sent to a rehabilitation center for people who had lost control in moments of emotional breakdown. There, surrounded by others whose faces carried their own scars of pain and regret, Sarah began to write, not to justify but to understand. She wrote about Lily, about the afternoons when they laughed until their stomachs hurt in the kitchen. She wrote about Daniel, the nights he held her in the rain, promising he'd never let go. And she wrote about that final night, the one where everything shattered, when pain and anger merged into one unbearable storm. Her handwriting trembled, but her words were honest. "I'm no longer the woman they once knew, but I don't want to be the person I was that night either." 2 years later, Sarah was released on parole. She left her old city behind and moved to a quiet coastal town, a place where no one knew her past, where there was only the sound of waves and wind. She became a volunteer at a support group for women who had suffered abuse and betrayal. Every day she listened as they spoke, stories filled with silence, fear, and heartbreak that mirrored her own. Some cried as they held her hand. One woman asked softly, "Have you ever forgiven yourself?" Sarah smiled faintly and whispered, "Forgiveness isn't easy, but living means you have to try." The judge who presided over her case once wrote a single line in her file. No one in this tragedy was truly evil, only people who didn't know when to stop before it was too late. That sentence stayed with her. Every morning she read it again, a reminder that justice isn't only found in a verdict, but in how a person chooses to rise after their mistakes. One evening, Sarah stood by the shore watching the sunset melt into the water. She closed her eyes, breathing in the cold air and tasting the salt on her lips. She was no longer the fragile woman she once was, no longer searching for answers in anyone else's eyes. She had learned how to forgive, starting with herself. If you ever find yourself in a relationship that makes you afraid, that makes you lose who you are, walk away while you still can, because sometimes survival itself is victory. Betrayal can kill love, but forgiving yourself is the only way to begin again. Thank you for watching Mr. Nightmare 1. If Sarah's story made you think, share it, because somewhere out there, someone might still be waiting to be saved from a pain they're too afraid to speak of.